Asian businessmen, for example, like to come here because we are an Asian city, but we're also a global city. At the same time, it's easy to do business.
Singapore's doors are always open to welcome the rich, the wealthy, the people who want to have the security and want to feel good and comfortable.
Singapore is a playground for the mega-rich, the place to park their wealth.
As people get more affluent, you want to look at more luxury items, better homes, better cars, better yachts. Well, as long as they flaunt it within the rules of the law, I think it's fine.
Billionaires, tycoons and big foreign firms are drawn here by the low taxes, stable government and protected banking laws that keep their accounts secret.
So I think Singapore will be the location where people custody their assets. What the Swiss have done for many, many years and done successfully, Singapore has simply taken that to another level.
But with the rising costs of living, many Singaporeans are struggling.
We have one of the most expensive public housing in the world. I think the core issue is that Singaporeans are finding it increasingly difficult to compete for jobs.
I'm Joanne Burrows. On this edition of 101 East, we ask who really benefits from living in the world's richest city.
There's no shortage of style or fun in the sun at the Singapore Yacht Show. Touted as the gateway to Asia's elite, visitor numbers have doubled since the show began 3 years ago.
Surely Singapore is becoming one of the most important hubs. We have a lot of new clients, a lot of new entrepreneurs, and a lot of new high net worth individuals which are just now thinking that a boat, a yacht can be part of their luxury living.
In a sea of sales, Alessandro Torelli is selling this yacht for $5.2 million.
Yachting can give you the freedom, can give you the privacy, and no any kind of luxury hotel can provide such a luxury and freedom in the same time.
Is it also a status symbol?
It is also a status symbol, surely.
Forget jets and limos if you want to travel in style. The dazzling array of super yachts are the draw cards here. They can even be chartered for a cool $50,000 a week.
This provides you a platform to have the time of your life. People are now becoming more aware of their surroundings, and I would argue that Southeast Asia has some of the most beautiful coastline in the world.
Arthur Tay's Marina hosts the yacht show on Sentosa, an island off Singapore's coast. He also has his own yacht and luxury goods firm. Arthur is showing around Malaysian gaming tycoon Lim Kok Tay. There's more toys to buy here than just boats.
I think Asia is now developing into the next level of pursuing more leisure expectation. It's probably the current continent where people are getting wealthier. Singapore is positioned as a fun place to be, also where business converge.
These ritzy events are part of Singapore's dramatic makeover, from colonial backwater to economic powerhouse in just 50 years. By throwing the doors open to super-rich foreigners, the country now manages 5% of the world's total private wealth, making Singapore the world's wealthiest city based on per capita income.
It's very clear that the efficiency part, the clarity that our government leaders have said that we want to position Singapore as the premier hub for everything to happen here. Relative to the size compared to India and China, we play a very strategic role to be the jewel in the Southeast Asian market.
Some of the wealthy tycoons with a presence in Singapore include Facebook founder Eduardo Saverin, Australian mining magnate Gina Rinehart, Malaysian entrepreneur Ong Beng Sang, and prominent US investor Jim Rogers.
The results of this chair has been tremendous.
Is that one of your big sellers? Or?
Yes, this is one of our top sellers right now.
Some of Singapore's wealthiest business leaders think their homeland has a lot to offer. Ron Sim is the founder and CEO of a massage chair manufacturer, Osim International. With an estimated net worth of $350 million, he says Singapore's reliability and resilience to global shocks makes it an attractive base.
If you look at Singapore, say last 30, 40 years, I think there's political stability, and that has led, to a clear culture, a clear vision, very pro-business, very effective. The things here works.
Since starting his business in the 1980s, Ron has expanded his range of lifestyle and healthcare products. Today, 90% of his business is done overseas in 28 countries. But he doesn't want to move his main office to a cheaper base like Thailand.
I mean, they have their weaknesses in terms of governmental change, the coups which impact their nations in some way.
But there is another incentive why big businessmen base their empires here.
In terms of taxes, I think Singapore is one, of the few, country like Hong Kong with low tax. I think the government here believes that, a competitive tax is important.
Singapore's corporate taxation of 17% at the highest rate is low compared with other advanced economies.
So looking at what's happening in the West, particularly various countries in Europe, looking at United States around the wealth transfer taxes or even just wealth taxes of any form, those are getting seemingly more harsh by the month, right? Every week there's an announcement from some parliament about more taxes, either envisioned or planned.
Nicolas Rambos is the CEO of WealthX, a startup company that gathers intelligence on rich individuals globally for major banks and corporations.
There are thousands of ultra-wealthy here, 1,300 or so Singaporeans themselves, people who have businesses in Singapore. But if you add to that the Indonesians who are here and who've been here for many years, the mainland Chinese, the Europeans who have money, sometimes first or second generation, there are thousands of people. There's a reason that Singapore has the highest density of supercars in the world. It's because that money is all here in Singapore.
With half the world's economic output shifting to Asia by 2050, Chinese businessman Tom Tang is looking to capitalise in Singapore. His company, the Rainwood Group, is affiliated with one of China's offshore oil giants, but has expanded into selling lifestyle products like soft drinks, golf courses, and this luxury super yacht.
Why Chinese, the typhoon, and move to Singapore? Because there's a great percentage of the population in Singapore, and Singaporean, they are actually Chinese. And so as a Chinese investor, we found lots of things in common.
Do you think it is the Chinese influence that has led to this explosion of wealth?
I won't actually completely deny on the point because of the population in China, and now China is really having an open policy, and there's lots of the Chinese people migrate to Singapore.
Acquiring property in Singapore is a ticket into a global business community. In this year's Knight Frank Wealth Report on global properties, 400 influential financial experts said Singapore will remain Asia's most important city for their clients.
We can't really say Singapore is a huge market in terms of the populations. Singapore is very easy for you to step in to formulate your product because of the whole country's system. But in terms of the luxury market, we actually taking a great advantage of the Singaporean these connections to the world. So we are still having a great confidence on that.
Like many foreign companies, Rainwood is buying heavily into Singapore's property market. The company bought over 40 of these high-rise apartments at Hamilton Scott's, one of Singapore's most coveted addresses.
You don't need to keep your Lamborghini, Ferrari, or in our case an Audi, in the basement garage. The best place to keep an eye on it is right here in the lounge room. So this is one.
Property dealer Mohammed Ismail Ghafoor is showing me around another luxury condominium called The Sale, where floor space is $2,000 per square foot. Other properties can be high as $6,000. Despite today's gloomy weather, the view of Singapore's business hub is impressive and increasingly expensive.
25% of all private property transactions in Singapore are purchased by foreigners. Looking at the property prices in the next 10 years, I'm extremely confident Singapore prices are going to stay stable and continuous growth. Simply because today the top 4 nations that invest in properties are ranked as Malaysia, our immediate neighbor to the north, followed by the Chinese and Indonesia and India. And if you look at it, they are all huge populations of 1 billion and hundreds of millions in Indonesia, and a small percentage of them who invest in Singapore, and that's why Singapore is always seen as a gold mine for property investment.
Foreigners are also snapping up waterfront properties on Sentosa, where long-term leases avoid investment restrictions. But this influx of wealth has driven up property prices by 77% in the last decade. To stop a housing bubble, the government has increased stamp duty to 15% for foreign buyers this year.
It has already deterred to some extent, I must say, because the volume of transactions have somewhat dropped compared to prior to these cooling measures, and now by about 30 to 40% depending on some of those locations. But the good thing though here is this: the prices today are very much muted in its growth, and in fact it becomes a buyer's market because sellers are not able to demand prices as they did a couple of years ago when there wasn't such a cooling measure.
But while the rich enjoy a livable city praised for urban innovation, many locals are struggling with rising living costs and job competition. Nicholas Fang is a government-approved MP, nominated by the public to bring independent views into Parliament.
The danger of the politics of envy is very high, and I think that it's hard for some Singaporeans to imagine that will be able to aspire to that kind of level of lifestyle or living. The impact of the presence of wealthy individuals who may not necessarily be Singaporean is making itself felt in Singapore on a social level.
These feelings were obvious at one of Singapore's biggest protests against a government white paper proposing to increase the population by up to 30% in 2030. With immigrants making up nearly half of that 6.9 million population figure, demonstrators said it would put more strain on public resources. The white paper aimed to improve land use and infrastructure in a city-state of just 700 square kilometres. But current redevelopments, like turning this old cemetery into an 8-lane highway and housing estate, prompt many to question if growth is coming at the expense of Singapore's soul.
What we are saying, we've got enough growth, please, government. Now is the time to see the quality of the growth itself. We don't want every place to be turned into a productive factory or office, but perhaps it's time to let some of the things be just to offer a quality of life.
Economist Song Seng Moon says Singaporeans have very different priorities to others living in nations crippled with job cuts and austerity.
What bothers them more now, it's not about the jobs, finding jobs. It's about way of life. It's about working condition. It's about the whole point of living in Singapore now. Yes, you have a job, but it is the quality of life they're looking at.
Do everyday local Singaporeans, do they identify with it, or are they a bit concerned about the way the country's changed?
A very good question. I mean, if you come here every year, you'll notice something different every time. You'll probably find that the change is at a pace which probably would have left them behind. What they can relate to really is their housing estate.
80% of Singaporeans live in public housing, including Jason Lim and his family. He says the public property market is unaffordable, because of inflation and competition from foreigners with permanent residency. Many of the middle class are saddled with huge mortgages that take decades to pay off.
I will be about 70. I can't retire unless something miracle happens. It's a lifetime thing. Well, we have seen an inflation about 100%, over the past 10 years or so.
Today, cars in Singapore can cost up to 3 times more than their actual worth because the government issues a certificate of use that expires within 10 years. Jason spends $800 a month paying off his car. The scheme, aimed at limiting car ownership to ease traffic congestion, increases a family's debt for years.
Besides that, you need to pay the road tax, insurance, all right, and the maintenance, which are pretty common. And of course, these costs are not cheap, all right? The insurance itself can cost you a couple of grand.
As an audiovisual technician, Jason has a reliable source of income, but he doesn't think many of the middle class have the means to reach their ambitions.
People always associate high income with good quality life. It doesn't really come hand in hand together. And this time in Singapore, right? Because like I say, the middle income are basically being able to meet their basic needs.
Prominent blogger Leong Si Hyang also lives in public housing. He describes the middle class in Singapore as the sandwich class.
If you are lower income, there are some basic schemes available to help you. But if you are middle class, you don't qualify for any of these schemes. Even if your little public house that you bought has been increasing in value over the years, it may just be an illusion because you may retire with hardly any money because all your money and all your pension went into your public housing.
Chef Benny Sio Teo has just opened the 5th branch of his restaurant chain aimed at middle-class consumers. He serves Western dishes with a Singaporean twist. But Chef Benny says affordability matters more. His restaurants thrived during the economic crisis, but now times are tougher.
We opened up a new restaurant. In 6 months, 80% will actually close down. Those gourmet restaurants, I really don't think that they are doing very well. This is my observation, unless you are celebrity chefs. But if for a Singaporean to start a higher-end restaurant, it's very, very tough.
Benny wasn't always doing so well. He's a reformed drug addict who went to jail a number of times. Now he helps others. While most restaurants hire foreign workers, Benny employs Singapore's downtrodden.
If they are able to get a job, I think there's a good chance that they can actually reform and survive in this society. If they come out from prison, let's say, and they don't have a job, most likely I would say that they'll go back to their old ways.
One of his chefs, Gwinder Singh, recently spent time in juvenile prison. He's noticed that life in the new Singapore is tough.
Prices are already rising. I don't know what to expect in time to come, but I'm definitely not living in Singapore. No way. I was actually thinking of places like Malaysia, where it's like 2 times cheaper.
The Kokor Street flats house one of Singapore's poorest communities. Resident Samsuri Mahari estimates 6 out of 10 people here are unemployed. Samsuri earns 600 Singaporean dollars a month, the equivalent of $480 US, doing odd jobs to provide for his wife and 6 children. He's applied for other jobs like airport cleaning, but he says the travel costs make it unaffordable.
With the deduction of the transport and cost for my food, I'll be back only reach my family about $300 to $400 the most. I will waste a lot of time to travel. It takes me about 1.5 hours to go and come back.
He set up an outreach group called Perkek with other elders to address poverty on this estate. They help people like Sidar Binti Yusof find government services or jobs. Sidar has heart problems and lives in this 1-room flat with her brother who suffered a stroke. Together they receive $280 in government assistance.
Is it okay if, let's say, this group, the support group, link you to other service that can assist with your economy? Let's say if we offer you some light job, flower arrangement at home.
But my hand, I cannot grab this hand.
Oh, cannot
this hand
grab.
is problem. This hand no problem.
Okay.
Because I do angiogram.
So that means
about 2 years already.
Oh.
And my leg also I cannot walk. I cannot take a staircase.
The group have had many successes in helping the community, including forming a soccer team and a schooling program for young children. It's helped stop late-night antisocial behaviour like loo sniffing.
I don't want to see the children down here in 10 or 15 years to be my neighbour over here. I like to secure these youth, the children's future. I don't want them to be as it like me.
Kukor Street and underprivileged areas around Singapore don't have the grinding poverty seen in other parts of Asia. But as corporate pay packages rise here, wages among Singapore's lower classes have fallen by 10% over the past decade. Leong Se Hian says a larger social net is the solution to income inequality.
The problem with Singapore is that we have so little basic social protection for the low income. We don't have universal healthcare, we don't have pensions, we don't have automatic welfare for people who are, say, disabled.
Though increasing the social net for those at the bottom means an end to low taxation, the very driver bringing wealth.
There's definitely more talk now of, given the income inequality that we're experiencing, to have more safety nets for especially the lower income segments of the society. But everything has a cost, right? If you want to do more in that sense, then the money has to come from somewhere. And I think the question that we're asking now is that are Singaporeans willing to pay higher income tax?
When it comes to the issue of a social net, Ron Sim can see both sides of the coin. Growing up in a struggling family of 7 children, he worked odd jobs from the age of 9. To pay for university, he sold door-to-door products, worked on construction sites, and waited tables at a noodle stand.
I think it depends on how you tax the people. I think it's okay to tax people, which are making more money in a sense, but it should not be a direct tax. Like I said, consumption tax is good. It's okay to have more consumption tax in a sense. It's okay to have more transactional tax, for certain levels of people in certain property sector. I think that's fine. But in terms of corporate tax and personal tax, you do not want to drive the entrepreneurship away.
Given the high quality of public services compared to the rest of the world, Singaporeans say there's a culture of expectation that is often hard to navigate.
Sometimes the Singaporeans like to whinge a lot. There's some ground to say that perhaps Singaporeans are more pampered lot than elsewhere. They can be very patriotic and energetic about what they want Singapore to do, which is good, but at the same time they can be very demanding of what the state can do for them as well, because the state has the resources to help them.
In the Asian century, this island state has become a vibrant business epicentre, delivering growth in an age of austerity. But this success lies in courting more foreigners and the wealthy.
For a country that has no natural resources pretty much other than its own people, I think this was a necessary decision that the government made a few years ago, and it's something that has served the economy well. Foreigners will be part of our culture, will be part of our lives for a long time. And one of the questions that we are asking as Singaporeans now is, can we live with this? How do we accept this, and how do we blend those two and make sure that people still remain happy and still feel a sense of being rooted to Singapore?
Singapore's Prime Minister once said an inclusive society is one where everyone benefits from the nation's progress, has a sense of belonging, and a real chance to move up. The challenge is balancing these ideals and the pursuit of economic growth in one of the world's richest cities.
They're young, poor and alone in a foreign country.
I'm sorry to trouble you.
Girls as young as 15 are being sent from villages in Myanmar to the high rises of Singapore to work illegally as domestic helpers. I'm Steve Chow. On this episode, 101 East meets the underage girls who say they were abused inside Singaporean homes.
She's a child in a strange country, desperate to find her way home. The social workers taking care of her have asked that we hide her identity, so we're calling her Tet Tet. A month ago, Tet Tet left Myanmar and boarded a plane bound for Singapore. An agent had promised her a job as a domestic worker. But it was illegal to hire Tet Tet. Under Singaporean law, all foreign domestic workers must be at least 23 years old. Tet Tet is just 15. To keep up the charade, her Myanmar agent got her a passport with a fake birth date. February the 5th, 1992. Tet Tet says she was born in the year 2000. It sounds like an implausible plan. Surely someone would uncover the truth. But even doctors conducting her medical checkup in Singapore didn't seem to notice how young she was. She had become a child worker in one of Asia's richest cities. Tet Tet's disturbing story might never have surfaced had she not run away after realizing she couldn't cope with the job. But what's truly shocking is that her story is not unique.
Last year we saw at least 10 Burmese domestic workers who were underage, and just this month alone we encountered 6.
According to official statistics, there are more than 230,000 foreign domestic workers in Singapore. Traditionally, they've come from the Philippines and Indonesia. But NGOs say they've been seeing more and more women from Myanmar in recent years.
Agencies are bringing them in larger numbers. Because you can pay Burmese domestic workers less, so it's about cost.
The rise in the number of workers comes despite a supposed clampdown. In September 2014, the Myanmar government banned its citizens from seeking domestic work overseas, following several reports of abuse. But that has done little to stem the tide.
The agency find ways to bribe the authorities so that their workers can leave Myanmar, even though there's a ban.
Next station, Orchard.
Girls are still leaving Myanmar, only now they are doing so illegally, making them vulnerable to exploitation. Noor Gaise was just 17 when she came to Singapore. Gaise hoped to earn enough money to support her family and send her younger siblings to school. But 3 months after starting work in Singapore, she called a government helpline. She said her employer was abusing her. Gaise is now 19. This shelter has been her home for nearly a year. But the shelter will have to do for now. She has to stay here as long as police investigations are still underway. "5 months after meeting Gacy, we finally see her smile.
I am very happy.
She's going home at last. Her case has finally been resolved. A court recently sentenced her employer to 6 weeks in prison for assaulting her. This is where Gacy used to live and where she was so badly treated. Towner Estate, one of many public housing estates in Singapore. Life for her inside one of these flats was isolating and bewildering. She says she was only allowed outside when she walked her employer's children to and from the local school. While Gacy plans her journey home, back at the shelter, another young woman from Myanmar is left living in limbo. Momo was also just 17 when she arrived in Singapore. She's been at the shelter for more than 2 years after running away from an employer she says sexually abused her. She's agreed to speak to us if we hide her identity. Momo says she finally ran away after her employer raped her, risking her life by climbing out of the window of his 7th floor apartment. We ask why she didn't leave earlier. Being in debt creates a dilemma that many of the women at the shelter know too well. Often, the first 6 to 10 months of their salaries go towards paying their agents for arranging their flight, visa, accommodation and employment.
It leads to situations of forced labor. The women feel compelled to continue working for the employer because they haven't paid up their debt. And the debt also compels them to work under very exploitative and abusive conditions because if they are unable to pay it off, they are afraid that they might be harassed or their families might be harassed in their countries of origin.
The abuse that Gacy suffered at the hands of her employer will be hard to forget. But at least she's going home. Myanmar is a 3-hour plane ride from Singapore. Gacy's older sister spent the night at a bus station so that she could get to the airport in time. They've not seen each other for more than a year. It's monsoon season in Myanmar and it's a slow journey home. 3 hours drive from Yangon, in what looks like the middle of nowhere, someone very special is waiting for them. The road to their village is too muddy for cars to pass. So Gaysay's father has come with a bullock cart to take his daughters home.
Here my mother, they see my mother. You see my mother very cute, right?
You miss her?
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't lean it on my mother, me without the meeting of good change. I am at the low, pick it. Say much hand. Near and little say tika at it to me, Yamachin.
Life is hard here. Gaysay's family are rice farmers who make around $1,200 a year. So when an agent told her about a job that would pay her at least $350 a month, she jumped at the opportunity. She's now decided it's better to be a farmer.
Better than working in Singapore.
Yeah.
But not everyone regrets their decision to leave the village. Gaysay's neighbour has also just returned from Singapore. She says her employers treated her well.
Lúc đó tôiပြောlà phò là chị sẽ công nó xin về. Khi này mà công nó tôi mới tiền lại. Cái đó ba này công là suy là tôi mới tiền là mà hậu bảo em bảo.
She was lucky, but she was also illegal. When we asked to see her passport and identity card, the birth dates don't match.
Tôi nhớ tên là sao tên này vào nó không mà lại là sao tên này, công nó là sao tên này phía mặt toa ya suy đó. Anh engineer account đâu phía đây, tôi nhớ toa sẽ làm nó anh nó bắt đầu trả đấy, anh ya anh tôi nhớ hoa lệ tên khó anh tôi nhớ lệ toa lại đấy.
There are women who never make it home. While we're in Gaysay's village, a terrible story breaks in Singapore. A domestic worker from Myanmar is dead, and her employers, a mother and daughter, charged with her murder. Piang Nai Don had been with the family for more than a year before her untimely death. According to media reports, Piang was found with bruises on her body, indicating that she had been abused. We decide to pay Piang's family a visit. But they live in an area even more remote than Gaysay's village. To get there, we must first return to Yangon, then take a plane to the city of Calais in northwest Myanmar. Next, we get into a four-wheel drive and head into neighboring Chin State, one of the poorest regions in the country. It's a slow, bumpy ride over 50 miles of rough, mountainous terrain. Landslides are a regular occurrence here, and the journey takes 10 hours. As we near the village, we switch to motorbikes for the last part of the journey. The road here is so bad, even our four-wheel drive can't get through. Piang was a single mother and had left her son in her sister's care when she went to work in Singapore.
Khán xa đấy, chúng mà đi mà đi lâu rồi này lâu lên mà siêu tôi ta lại về lâu, chúng mà lâu cái suy mà lẽ lâu chúng mà khán ta này khán xa.
Now that she's gone, Piang's little boy will only know his mother through these photos. The family says she rarely called home and never complained about her job. They only suspected something was wrong when they spoke to her just 2 weeks before her death in late July.
Chúng mà đâu xí mà lẽ, mà chúng mà đi mà con lâu biển xin đấy, để ô câu chỉ lên niệm, ô câu tha biển về để chúng mà cô rằng con ăn thị là chú.
It was the last time they spoke. Outside the house, Piang's siblings have prepared a cross for her. They want her to be buried next to their parents. But something doesn't match. It says here that she was born on the 13th of June 1992. Official documents produced by Piang's sister confirm that this is correct. But it appears her agent had changed the birth date on her passport to 2 months earlier, the 13th of April 1992. So when Piang arrived in Singapore, she was actually under 23, the legal minimum age for domestic workers there. Had corrupt officials in Myanmar not provided her with false paperwork, had Singaporean authorities discovered the truth, she might still be alive today. It's beautiful in Dimpi, but the scenery can't mask the poverty that's evident everywhere in this village. Young women desperate for a better life are easy targets for unscrupulous agents. A year ago, Pao and Man were told they too could get jobs in Singapore. The teenagers speak only a Chin dialect and know very little of the world outside the village. But a recruitment agent told them they had nothing to worry about. They were taken to a boarding house in Yangon. There, 16-year-old Pao had a change of heart after overhearing a telephone conversation between a roommate and her worried parents. She fled the boarding house in the early hours one morning with another girl from her village, leaving Man behind. The streets of Yangon must have seemed a bewildering place for two teenagers from a faraway village. When a taxi driver offered them a free ride, they got into his car. But then, she says, he tried to molest them. She's reluctant to say much more about the ordeal. What we do know is that the girls managed to fend him off. Luckily, the next stranger they met got them the help they needed. Zam Zar Thorn lives in Yangon, but he's originally from Dimpi, the girls' home village. When he met them, they told him their friend Man was still at the boarding house, in danger of being sent to Singapore. He decided to launch a rescue mission. The recruitment agent's boarding house is on the 7th floor of this building. Zam arrived accompanied by some police officers. He demanded that Man be released. It proved their connection to the runaway girls. They could no longer deny involvement. And keeping up the pressure, Zam was able to rescue the teen who had been left behind. There are recruitment agents who say they are trying to clean up the industry. At this training center in Yangon, the policy is to only recruit women who are at least 23 years old. Mary was once a domestic worker herself. She says she had a hard time when she first got to Singapore.
အဓိကအများဆုံးဖြစ်တဲ့ပြဿနာကတော့ဘာသာစကားနားမလည်တဲ့ပြဿနာနဲ့ဒီတန်ရှင်းရေးအပိုင်းချက်တဲ့ပြုတ်တဲ့အပိုင်းတွေမှာပေါ့မကြည်ညက်တာ training ကောင်းကောင်းမပေးတဲ့အပိုင်းတွေမှာပြဿနာတော့တွေ့တယ်အဲ့ဒါတော့တွေ့ရတယ်
Despite claiming that her trainees are of legal age, her business isn't totally above board, and Mary still wants her identity hidden. Beyond the training, she must also find ways for these women to get out of Myanmar. She says immigration officials have to be bribed to turn a blind eye.
အလဲဗီဇာအရင်အစစ်တော့မဟုတ်ဘူးထင်တယ်သမီးသိရောเนาะအဲ့အလဲဗီဇာအရင်လုပ်တယ်ဒီဘက်မှာအလဲဗီဇာပြရင်တစ်လဆိုရင်ပေါ့တစ်လနေရင်ပြန်လာမယ်ဘယ်နည်းနေရာတော့ဘယ်နည်းအဲ့လိုမျိုးနေပြတယ်ပြပြီးဒီဘက်ကိုဖြတ်တယ်ဟိုဘက်ကျတော့စင်ကာပူကပေးတဲ့ work permit IPA bond letter ဟိုဘက်မှာကျတော့အဲ့ bond letter အဲ့လိုမျိုးပြပြီးထွက်တယ်စာရွက်နှစ်ခုနဲ့အဲ့လိုမျိုးထွက်ကြတယ်
Mary says she won't exploit underage girls. But plenty of other recruitment agents have been doing just that, and we're about to meet one. A source has given us her address, and we've decided to pay her a visit.
Hi, sorry to trouble you. It's okay. Auntie sent us a photo.
Yes, yes.
Our cover story is that we're a Singaporean couple trying to track down their aunt's former domestic worker.
This is the employment pass photo.
Through the door, row after row of young women can be seen sitting on the floor. The agent asks one of them to look at our photo. She seems awfully young, no more than a teenager.
She from Singapore? No, she's not at Singapore. Oh, she's the first one.
She's not the only new recruit. We learn that everyone sitting here has only recently arrived. Many of them look like they're still in their teens.
Do you also send girls to Singapore as well?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, yes.
And then she helpfully tells us the name of her Singaporean partner.
We have an agency, we contact SLF in Singapore. You can find their SLF agency.
We're back in Singapore and we've found SLF agency.
Yeah. Thank you.
This time, we pose as potential employers looking to hire a domestic worker from Myanmar.
You can try the fresh one because fresh one is very brilliant.
We're introduced to this young woman.
How old are you?
I am 20 years old.
Her answer should have raised alarm bells, but the agents don't seem perturbed. Instead, they try hard to close the deal.
Because it's very fast can do. How if you confirm maybe 4 working days, 3 to 4 working days can do.
The laws of both Myanmar and Singapore were written to protect girls like this one from exploitation. But no one, not even the governments who wrote the rules, seems to be taking any notice of them. When we wrote to Singapore's Ministry of Manpower, they sent us a single paragraph citing a survey showing that 97% of foreign domestic workers were satisfied working in Singapore. Our queries about government policies, corruption in Myanmar, and the abuse of women and even girls were all ignored. The Myanmar government didn't even respond to our request for comment.
It's an issue which both source and destination countries have to have the political will to do something about. It's not a problem that lies only with the Burmese government or the Singapore government. So there has to be a lot more bilateral cooperation to ensure that this kind of exploitation by recruitment agents don't happen.
For young women with few options in their home country, employment as domestic workers in Singapore can be a way out of poverty. But unless flaws in the system are fixed, there's always the risk that their dreams of a better life could turn into a nightmare.